What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Bit of a fun one for you all today. So top 30 values based on ADP put into tiers. What I've done is I've downloaded my half PPR rankings. I looked positionally, compared the positional rankings to the average across the industry for redraft leagues and said, okay, what are the best values if we not only look at the early rounds, we look at the early, middle, and late rounds and also include across different positions. Obviously, someone that is ranked at player, like I don't have anyone whose ADP is past 100th position, right? I have one that's in the 90s that we'll get to, and of course is in D tier, but you are a better value if you are an early round pick and you're like even only like 2 or 3 spots ahead of that in the rankings, as opposed to someone who goes off the board at pick like 70, right? The 70th wide receiver, if I have him ranked 60th, that's a good value, but a way better value would be even only 5 points difference in the early round. So we'll kind of touch on that, but this isn't just straight saying, oh, I have them X number ahead of ADP, and so they're in S tier. It also takes into account that an early value is way better than a late value. So let's start things off. Oh, and between the positions, there is like very little that's separating these players. What it is sorted by is just going to be like what the difference is, like in terms of difference between my ranking positionally and the overall positional in the industry. But within the tiers, there's not a huge difference. So tier 1, Chase Brown, Malik Nabers, Rashee Rice, and Cooper Kupp. We'll go one by one. Again, all of these are very, very good values. I'm not saying Chase Brown is like a way better value than Cooper Kupp. These are one of the 4 best values in drafts basically right now. And it kind of makes sense with like everything that we've kind of talked about value-wise this season being like, you know, first round, realistically, first round, you're just not going to get an amazing value. There is no one on this list that is in the first round. It's pretty difficult to be an exceptional value in round 1. But as we work our way into rounds like, 3, 4, 5, we've said very, very good value at wide receiver. Not a bunch of like amazing values at running back in the early rounds. There's good picks, and there's some that show up here, but not like incredible values. You kind of just have to take them. And then we get into better values later on. Chase Brown is one of those better values. So Chase Brown, still don't really know if he or Zach Moss is going to, lead this team in fantasy points. I've been a Zach Moss truther at times, but I think Zach Moss is just like a quality running back, someone that can get touches, can be like kind of an early down grinder, not someone who's going to excel in the receiving game, not someone who's going to be highly efficient, but just someone they know they can throw out there that's not going to be terrible, right? He's kind of a filler, but he's not really a game changer. He's not someone who has, top end speed. He's not someone who can really break off super long plays. And so given what this offense is, how explosive they want to be, I do think Chase Brown just kind of fits the offense a little bit better. They want explosiveness. They want, pass catching upside. And, Chase Brown, while he was good in that area last season, wasn't really given an opportunity last season just because, the pass protection issues, him being a rookie, them having Mixon. I think there's just so much more working in his favor this season to where he's not a lock to do amazing, but I have him as running back 27, industry ADP, running back 36. That is a very, very strong value and a great range to get him because you kind of exit that range of those top wide receivers we want and we get back into the running backs where we want to be targeting them. So great pick. Malik Nabers, I have him as the wide receiver 18. He's a wide receiver 24 on average. Another very strong pick. The injury is not a concern. So remember, he had this ankle injury. He's already back at practice. He's totally fine. I don't know what his target share is going to be this season, but if you were from the future and you came back and you told me it was like 28%, 29%, I'd be like, oh my goodness, but I get it, right? Like that's obviously crazy. It's unreal if anyone ever surpasses, you have to be like Devonta Adams to surpass like 30%, and even 25 is a great number. He's a very strong chance of having like, 26, 27, 28% target share this season. There's no one else to throw to. He's going to be the focal point of the offense. They will use him on end arounds. They will use him on screen passes, deep downfield. Like he's highly athletic, so he can, bust off a touchdown given any touch anywhere on the field. Like everything is going his way besides his quarterback. Obviously, Daniel Jones is not a high-end quarterback. Obviously, the Giants are not a high-end team, and so touchdown potential. But I have that factored in, right? I have it factored in that he's got a bad quarterback. I have it factored in that they're not going to score many touchdowns. Like, I don't have him projected that many touchdowns. He still comes out great because he's going to be the focal point of this offense. Exceptional pick. Rashee Rice becoming a much better pick simply because we have this Marquise Brown injury. We know that it's, at this point, very unlikely that Rashee Rice gets suspended this season. A suspension is probably coming, but in 2025. So you factor in no suspension. You factor in less camp time for Marquise Brown, not healthy to start the season. You've got Travis Kelce, a year older. You've got Rashee Rice playing exceptionally well down the stretch last season. When he finally started to develop, he really hit his stride. This is a kid who can rack up 7, 8, 9 receptions in games from Patrick Mahomes in what could be and should be a top 5 scoring offense this season. That's an amazing pick for his ADP. I think his ADP will probably start to rise, but people have enough problems with not knowing with the suspension that I don't think it's going to get that high. Then finally in S tier, Cooper Kupp. I think there's a very real chance. Oh, I didn't say Rashee Rice, I have him 29th, 35th by ADP. Cooper Kupp, I have him 12th by position ranking, 16th by ADP. So I think there's a real chance that Cooper Kupp is the number 1 scoring wide receiver on the Rams this season. Even if he is not, it's going to be 1A, 1B, and so he's still going to be a very, very strong play. He's going to have significant weekly upside. We know that Stafford has no problem locking in on him. I don't know. I just look back to he just wasn't healthy the last year and a half. A couple years ago when he was fully healthy, he wins the Triple Crown. Year after that, he's set up to win it again. Then he gets hurt. Misses the rest of the season, comes back. When he was healthy, dominates, but he really just wasn't healthy last season, and now we're here. He's not too old to produce. There's other wide receivers that people are drafting ahead of him that are even older. He's a great pick. Many times you can get him in round 3. I'd love that. Imagine getting him in round 3. Next tier, a bigger tier, and starting to introduce some later round players, or some players that potentially, if you see this first player on the list, not quite as good, but the value in what you're getting when you draft them is still very, very high. So we've got Sam Darnold, Brian Thomas Jr., Noah Fant, Jalen Wright. We've got Xavier Worthy, Tyjae Spears, Devon Achane, and Kenneth Walker. Where are you, Ken? Really? He's on the list. I promise you guys he's on the list somewhere here. There he is. Okay. So Darnold makes it because, as I've said a million times, I really don't care who the quarterback is for the Vikings. If you are even half competent, you're going to produce, right? Nick Mullins had 4 starts last season, threw for 395 or more yards twice, averaged 306 passing yards. You've got studs you're throwing to. You've got a great offensive coordinator. Sam Darnold can absolutely get it done this season. I was excited about McCarthy, and I'll be excited about him next season when he does take over as a starting quarterback. But McCarthy's done for the year. So you've just got Sam Darnold, unless he absolutely poops himself, as the starting quarterback this season. And you know what? Again, I have him ranked 20th. Right now he's 33rd, so obviously that's going to rise. But I think he's a great pick, and I've said a few times in recent videos, pair him with Goff. So if you miss out on a top 11 quarterback this season, go Goff, Sam Darnold. That's an easy double dip. You're going to get significant upside for both of them. You're going to be able to stream them in matchups. I just think he's a great pick right now, especially an Underdog. Be getting him. Brian Thomas Jr., this is just me kind of shifting it a little bit more towards him. So I have him as a wide receiver 41, ADP wide receiver 49. I've moved more work from Christian Kirk over to Brian Thomas Jr. because it doesn't look like Christian Kirk is going to be on the field in 2 wide receiver sets. That hurts. Imagine that, though. Imagine a 2 wide receiver set with Brian Thomas Jr. and Gabe Davis. You don't think Brian Thomas Jr. is getting a significant target share if all he has to compete with is Gabe Davis, running backs, and then Ingram? But Ingram only runs shallow, right? So anything deep downfield, Brian Thomas Jr. is going to be the focal point of his passing attack. He's got significant upside weekly because of how explosive he is as a player. Seems like he's starting to hit his stride a little bit more in camp right now. And there's a real chance he's a top value or top wide receiver on the Jaguars. And if that's going to happen going way later than Christian Kirk on average, obviously that makes him a very good pick. Noah Fant, first tight end we're going to talk about today. He's the tight end in the later rounds. So we did the video talking about how do you identify a late round tight end. You're going to need the snaps, which has been a problem for Noah Fant. But this season, it should be fixed. They had Parkinson, they had Will Dissly last season. Those are good tight ends. Like, Parkinson's probably the tight end one this season for the Rams, at least until Higbee's 100%. And like, both of them have been good. Dissly's been good in his career. Trash. They've trashed after that this season. He's the locked in one. It is a slight concern that, like, you know, you've got, let's just say they run more 11 personnel, which they're probably going to run this season. You've got Metcalf, you've got Jason, you've got Lockett. And so it is going to be hard for him to compete with targets there, but he doesn't need like that high of a target share, given how athletic he is, given how explosive he is. We look for explosiveness, we look at snaps, we look at target share. It can all be there for him this season. I would say target share is probably the one you're most concerned with. But for tight end, if they're actually going to utilize him properly, which I think Ryan Grubb's going to be a good offense coordinator, I think he's actually going to use his players to the best of their abilities. Noah Fant was in an interview talking about this, talking about how they're finally actually being used to the best of their abilities, being like, okay, you're good at this. I'm actually going to design plays to get you the ball in this way. I think Fant has upside this season. And for where he's going, again, I have him as the tight end 19, tight end 27 off the board. That's a great value. This is, again, the range where if you miss out on a top 7 tight end, then you miss out on Ferguson. Maybe you just wait a really long time. You grab Noah Fant and someone else. You're just trying to double dip late, try to hit on one of them. I think because of the athleticism, because of the increase in passing this season, because of just how good this offense can be this year, I think he definitely steps up. And if he can hit like an 80% target share, then that's going to really benefit him. Jaylen Wright, and you're going to see Devon Achane, so I guess we can kind of just go over both of them right now. Running back on Miami makes you good value. Like, that's really all it comes down to. Jaylen Wright, I have him 44th. He's the 51st running back off boards. I like his talent. So in the pre-draft process, he was one of my favorite running backs. Not like I was going to rank him, you know, the highest. Obviously, like, Brooks was just the number one running back in this class. I think everyone kind of had Trey Benson after that. But I really just liked Jaylen Wright a lot. And it was like, if he can land in a good situation, he can be really good. He lands in Miami. And so you're like, okay, it's like not a good situation in terms of like, I would have preferred he landed in a spot where he could be the running back 1, but also like he could be, right? There is a world here where a 32-year-old Raheem Mostert, who in his career struggled to stay healthy, gets hurt. That could happen. Devon Achane could also get hurt. I mean, he struggled to stay healthy last season. He struggled to stay healthy this offseason. I know he had a good college career. I know he handled a lot of touches in college, but again, he's a smaller back. He could get hurt. We've seen it in the NFL. He has struggled to stay healthy. If that were to happen, and again, just one of them, it doesn't need to be both of them, either Mostert or Achane, they get hurt. If Jaylen Wright steps into like 12 to 14 touches a week in this offense, because remember, Devon Achane, it's like we love him because of speed, 99th percentile speed. Jaylen Wright has 98th percentile speed and a higher speed score because he's bigger. He's 210 pounds. He's a bigger back than Achane. I don't know. I mean, if Wright gets going this season, and we've had, you know, their coaching staff being like, listen, we're going to ride the hot hand. We know that a lot of running backs can succeed in this system. We're going to give them all touches, and whoever's hot, we're going to go with them. And if Jaylen Wright gets hot as the 51st running back off boards in the Miami Dolphins backfield, that's a lot of upside for him. So that was both those cases. But then like Achane was also one of the most efficient running backs we've ever seen as a rookie. People who have that low efficiency, like basically always repeat it, always get more touches. You can also see a world where he's like a top 3 running back, because if he can get up to 15 to 17 touches a game, it's really just who gets the touches, right? You want both of them because it's like whoever gets the touches you want. Obviously, Achane is a little bit more likely to get the touches. That's why he goes earlier. But they're both exceptional values in drafts because like Achane can be a top 3 running back, and Wright could be down the stretch, you know, a running back 1 if there's injuries. Worthy, it's the playing time thing. So our main concern to start the offseason was that how much is he going to play? What role is he going to have? We just don't know. Can he develop in camp? When you have this Marquise Brown injury, like the camp reps go up. To start the season, he's going to take over that Marquise Brown role. And so it's that same thing we talked about with A.D. Mitchell, we'll get to in a second. When you get way, way, way more reps in camp and the team is heavily invested in you and it's a good offense, all these things start to click. Historically, rookie wide receivers are great to draft because they have so much upside in the second half of the season, but it takes them to the second half of the season because they need those reps. Worthy and A.D. Mitchell are going to get so many more reps in camp because of these injuries that they're going to develop quicker. And so maybe it's not the second half of the season. Maybe it's like, you know, we're only a quarter way into the season and they start to really start showing. And of course, you have the fastest wide receiver in NFL history on the Kansas City Chiefs. That's going to be good value. So he is 34th. So I have him as the wide receiver 34, 40th by ADP. Achane, who I mentioned a second ago, I have him as running back 8, running back 11 by ADP. Next player, Tyjae Spears. I have him 29th. He is 33rd by ADP. I'm just flag planting. I think Spears is better than Pollard. If you think Pollard's better, then just cross Spears off this list. Honestly, take Pollard. Soon they're going to be going next to each other in ADP. Still on average, Spears does go around later, which is nice to get that value. I just think it's the targets that it comes down to. Like they could be top 5 in pass attempts this season. I don't think people fully understand that. And I do think Spears is a better pass catcher, will command targets at a higher rate than Tony Pollard. They're going to use the hot hand. I just think Spears is going to have the hot hand more. But again, if you think it's Pollard, switch the headshot here to Tony Pollard and be drafting him instead. Final player in this tier, Ken Walker. I love the Seahawks this season. And people were worried. They're like, oh, like maybe it could be Charbonnet time because maybe the new staff likes Charbonnet. Honestly, new staff seems to like Ken Walker more than the old staff did. Like they are singing his praises. I don't know if it's going to be as close to split as it has been historically. I think Ken Walker could go out there and not be featured, but have like a very, very strong role and kind of push Charbonnet to the side a little bit. And Ken Walker is a great running back. Is he boom bust? Yes, but the booms are going to be really nice. Like he is explosive. He can really hit that hole. He can turn any play into a home run. I think they're going to like that on this offense because they're emphasizing explosiveness this season. I don't know. I love Ken Walker. He goes at a great spot in drafts. I have him as running back 14, 17th by ADP. Next range. AD Mitchell. We've got Jonathon Brooks. We've got Rome Odunze. We've got Anthony Richardson. Where'd he go? There he is. Anthony Richardson, Kyler Murray. We've got Mark Andrews, Dalton Kincaid, and Kyle Pitts. So as you can see, a couple players to start, but then a huge range of these really, really strong values for quarterback and tight ends. We'll get that into a second. AD Mitchell. I'm 56th, 64th by ADP. So again, that's 8 spots of value. That is theoretically the second best value on this list, but it's going 64th. Value in the later rounds, you need to be a much stronger value because like ADPs, are very, very, will fluctuate a lot. You'll see much different picks there in terms of like, if someone goes as running back 13, well, they're probably not going to come 25th off the board. Like you're not going to see that much variance in the early rounds. A lot more variance later on. So you need to have a stronger value to actually be a very good pick. And then also just success rate is so much lower in the later rounds that even if you're good value, like you can only be so good of a value in the later rounds. So AD Mitchell, just talked about with Worthy. Downs goes down with the injury. AD Mitchell was rotating in more with Alec Pierce, but now AD Mitchell is going to learn the slot. He's going to be on the field in 2 and 3 wide receiver sets a lot more often in camp. He's going to just get more run early in the season. If we see Downs miss a week or two, he's going to develop quicker. Like that development, I think, was very, very important for AD Mitchell because he was a little bit more raw coming out. My model, again, doesn't love him, but it's a production model, and they're not always perfect. I do think there's a reason that a lot of film scouts really like what they saw in AD Mitchell. I think the community is kind of underrating him. I think he's a great pick in those later rounds. Jonathon Brooks, I've given this take a million times, so I have him 24th, 28th by ADP. I just think it's worth it. I know he's not going to start the first 4 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks. I know that it's going to take him a couple weeks after that to ramp up, maybe even to a player that we want. If you have an IR spot, though, he's an exceptional pick. But even if you don't, it's like he's someone that it's like you'd be hoping you found on free agency, right? Like he'd be like a league winner in free agency, right? Like if we got into week like 4 and you were able to pick up someone like Jonathon Brooks, that's someone that like could turn into someone that like is winning leagues, is being like, oh man, I didn't get Jonathon Brooks. Like that's how they got such a good value. And it's like, yeah, you have to give up, the 28th running back to get him. But understand that at 28th running back, that's likely your third running back. You were in like running back 3 range. So you have 2 already. You start a wide receiver in the flex. So you couldn't care less that he's not starting the first couple weeks of the season because you have fewer injuries. You don't have bye weeks. Once injuries and bye weeks start to happen, that's like week 4 on. Listen, that's when he's coming back, right? And maybe you can't trust him right away. But when he does return to like full strength, he's being featured down the stretch, he will probably return 3rd round value. And so it's basically, can you spend closer to like, what is the running back 20? Like an 8th round pick, somewhere around there. Can you spend 8th, 9th round pick, wait on it a little bit, and then get 3rd round value in the second half of the season? I would do that personally. Now, if you're not comfortable with it, if you only have 5 bench spots, if you don't have an IR spot, it becomes a worse pick. But especially if you've got like 7 bench spots and an IR spot, you should be hammering Jonathon Brooks this season. And then just pair him with like Chuba or pair him with Ford, right? If you actually are concerned that he's not going to start, well, Jerome Ford's value is going to be way higher to start the season. Take Ford and Jonathon Brooks. Take Chuba and Jonathon Brooks. You still have a really strong running back until Brooks returns. There's things you can do where he's not just taking him in a vacuum. Odunze, love him. Love the talent. I think there's an upside chance that, second half of the season, even to start the year really, but at some point this season, I think 2 wide receiver sets are going to be him and DJ Moore. I just think he's immensely talented. I don't think people fully understand that the drop-off from Malik Nabers to Rome Odunze talent-wise is not that much. My model has it about 4%. He's just a phenomenal player. Great opportunity on this team. This team's going to have a lot more upside now that they have Caleb Williams at quarterback. I just really like him as a player, and he's a great player in fantasy because he comes with downfield upside, red zone upside. So if he hits, he's hitting downfield, he's hitting for touchdowns. We love that in fantasy. Okay, now we get to these quarterbacks, right? Richardson, Kyler. Well, it's only those two for the Richardson and Kyler, and then the tight ends. Richardson, Kyler, Andrews, Kincaid, Pitts. I have all of them one spot ahead of ADP, so I don't have to go over all of them. Whatever their ADP is, I have them one quarterback spot ahead of that. I don't remember if I mentioned Odunze. I have him 38th. ADP is 42. So I have one spot ahead for all these other guys. I just think it's such a great value getting them, right? Like, we're in these middle rounds. You probably don't have to take them in the first 4 rounds of drafts. The first 2 rounds, about 90% accuracy in getting started with a player. Going to round 3, round 4, we're looking at about 70-75%. So we need to be focusing on running backs and wide receivers in those first 4 rounds because it's such a high rate of hitting on those players. Round 5, round 6, round 7, it drops off a cliff in our success rate in predicting these players. And so if you just shift your focus over to quarterback, over to tight end at that point, not only are you locking up these quarterbacks and tight ends that have the upside to be number 1, everyone that I've just listed out there, AR, Kyler, Mark Andrews, Dalton Kincaid, Kyle Pitts. They all have the upside to be the number 1 scoring at their position, and you're getting them in a range where the opportunity cost of running back wide receiver is so much lower. So you're going to hit on those first 4, potentially hit huge in these middle rounds. These other positions, that's how you build a super team. It's much more difficult to build a super team double dipping at quarterback and double dipping at tight end late because it's unlikely you hit on a true winner. Now you have to have hit in these middle rounds at running back and wide receiver, which is not very easy to do. So I love all of them. They're heavy, heavy targets for me in drafts. We don't need to go over them all individually, but a very quick take on all of them. AR, 30 fantasy points per 4 quarters last season. Number 1 in fantasy points per drop back. Stays healthy is insane. Kyler getting a bunch of weapons back, health back. That's going to be awesome. Weapons upgrade really for Kyler Murray. Mark Andrews, basically always a top 3 tight end, and you get him a little bit later than that this season. Dalton Kincaid could have 100 receptions if he's the number 1 target on this Bills offense with 317 targets available from last season. Kyle Pitts, the talent is there. The opportunity should be there. Everything should be increasing for him. Is he risky? Sure. Is the upside that he ends up being by far the tight end 1 in fantasy? Yes. C tier. Getting into worse values, but I want to reiterate, even in C tier here, everyone that made this list are the 30 best values in drafts when you look at ADP. And so don't think that these are bad values, right? These are still exceptional values in drafts. Braelon Allen. If you draft Breece Hall, you need to reach for Braelon Allen. If Breece Hall went down, Braelon Allen would be a must start. You'd lose value, of course, because he's not as good as Breece Hall, but you have to handcuff him there. You basically have to handcuff the handcuffs that we know, right? When you know with 100% certainty that a certain player will get a monster workload if the starter goes down, you just have to do it, right? You don't have to handcuff Derrick Henry, right? Because I don't even know who's going to get touched. It's probably a huge committee and a gross committee handcuffing Derrick Henry. So you don't do it. But we know with Braelon Allen, and even if you don't have Breece Hall, he's such a good pick late in drafts because we know, right? You put him on the bench. If there's a Breece Hall injury, now you have a running back 1 you just got for free with the final pick. Great value. I am 52nd, 58th by ADP. Drake London, I have him 10th, 12th by ADP. So again, we're getting to a little bit worse values, but still a good value. 2 spots of value in round 2 is very good. Talked about it with Pitts, but the total plays are going up. The pass play rate on those plays is going up. The quality of targets on those plays is going up. the touchdowns per play is going up. Like everything is going to increase. It's not like we're only passing more or they're only more efficient. Everything goes up. And so you see a meteoric rise in your value. Easily the top target on this team. He's a great pick. Waddle, high, like the weekly upside can win you a week. Tyreek Hill goes down. He's a top 3 wide receiver every week, and you probably have to have him to win. But he's just a very, very good pick. He battled through injuries last season. We just know it's so locked in with him. Like you just know the 100% certainty. His role on offense is crazy good. And yeah, he might come with a slightly lower floor, but I just want those guys who any week can go out there and have a $175 and 2 or 3 touchdowns, because that's what, wins you weeks in the regular season, but also into the playoffs. You just got to have guys on your roster that have huge upside, and Waddle has obvious upside this season. And being drafted relatively decently to his floor, like I have him as the wide receiver 16. He's 18th by ADP. If he stays healthy, how much lower than wide receiver 18 can he really be this season? Probably not that much lower. And then Derrick Henry, I'm 7th. He's the running back 8. You can't make a value video without talking about Derrick Henry, because also he opens up so much. If you happen to go in round 1 with wide receiver and you're like, oh no, Nick told me I have to draft a running back in the first 2 rounds of the season because there's so many values at wide receiver, at quarterback, at tight end in the middle rounds, Derrick Henry bails you out. I just think he's an awesome pick. In half PPR, I have him 15th overall. That is barely into round 2. Anywhere in round 2, you're good to take Derrick Henry. I mean, at the turn, I would still prefer, I'd still take Gibbs. I would still take JT, and I'd still take Saquon. But once we exit that, the next pick, you're totally fine taking Derrick Henry. 20 touchdown upside this season. If you told me he had 23 touchdowns, I wouldn't be shocked. He has incredible touchdown upside. They have just tiny backs behind him, backs that just aren't good. Every time they get inside the 5-yard line, they're going to Derrick Henry. It's overblown how often Lamar Jackson runs the ball when they get into the red zone. He doesn't really run that often in the red zone. They do just line up traditionally and just pound it in with their back, and that back is Derrick Henry this season. He is an absolute league winner. Final tier, D tier. Again, still very good values. These are basically just the best values in the later rounds, also throwing Tank Dell kind of into the mix here. I put the wrong Tank first, but it's Jalen Tolbert, it's Tank Bigsby, it's Greg Dortch, it is Michael Wilson, it is Rashad Bateman, and it is Tank Dell. Again, for everyone other than Tank Dell, you can only be so good of a value going the later round. So I'll just rip through these values here. Tolbert, I have him as wide receiver 73, 91st on average. He's free in the final round. Bigsby, 57th. He's 71st by ADP. Greg Dortch, I'm 79th. He's 92nd by ADP. Michael Wilson, 70th in my rankings, 77th by ADP. Bateman, 71st, 78th by ADP. And then Tank Dell, 24th, 26th by ADP. I think Tolbert's locked in 3. There have been camp reports that he's the second best wide receiver. I don't buy him. I think that he is the locked in 3rd wide receiver, but on a team that's going to run a ton of 3 wide receiver sets, a team that is highly explosive, a team that right now has CeeDee Lamb, not 100% to start the season. I think CeeDee Lamb's going to start the season, but a lot of upside with Jalen Tolbert. Tank Bigsby, I'm starting to buy in. I don't know. I mean, the reports are just flowing in, and honestly, he looks good. Even if you look at camp film, you look at what he's done the preseason, you look at everything, he actually does look better this season. Every single day, the chance that they add in another running back drops because, you can't just add a running back 2 days before week 1 and expect them to have a role. If they're actually going to enter the season with Tank Bigsby as this too, he's an exceptional pick in the late rounds. I know I said that last season, and he was one of the worst running backs in the NFL. It seems like he's actually improved this season. No one wants to draft him. Good pick in the last round. Greg Dortch, I will flag plant that Greg Dortch is good at football. I just think he's an exceptional wide receiver. Commands targets at a very, very high rate. He's just a player that, if he gets the snaps, he's going to produce. Better in full PPR, but this is half PPR. And again, I have him 79th. He's 92nd. He's free. So in the final round, you want to grab Greg Dortch. I know they have Trey McBride. I know they have Marvin Harrison Jr. Those both are obviously going to out-target him. I think Michael Wilson, also right next to him. I think Michael Wilson's probably also the better pick. Have him ranked that way. But these two are going to have a very strong role, and no one really knows what to do with them. And so they've just kind of been pushed back. Exceptional on Underdog. I would say in a redraft league, if you want to go this far, are you even drafting my 70th wide receiver in a redraft league? I don't know. So great value. If you are in a 12-team competitive league, maybe there's a deeper bench, there are great picks for for your final bench spot because they're going to play a lot this season. And I think they're going to have, some really strong weeks and be a lot better than a lot of the wide receivers you're getting in this general range. But I would say like better picks on Underdog. Bateman, listen, I think he's a good value. I think the hype sometimes gets a little bit crazy. I will say it seems like some of the hype this season is a little bit warranted. He actually does seem better, and he's going to play the X. So he's going to go out there and get as many snaps as he can possibly handle. And if he actually is as good as it seems like he's been in camp, he's going to be a really strong pick. He's going to outperform the wide receiver 78 on average. How much can he outperform it? I don't know. Again, this is the tier of this is your last pick. If these players, stay healthy, they're going to shatter their ADPs. It's just, can they make it into your starting lineup? I think everyone here can. I think there's a world where Bateman does do that because Flowers hasn't gotten that much hype in camp. I'm semi-worried about how early Flowers is going in drafts. But he's always been a prospect that, my prospect model loved him. A lot of people who, watch film really like him. It's can he stay healthy? We'll see with him this season, but good pick in the final rounds. And then Tank Dell grades out as a decent value. Listen, I don't know. I don't know who's going to be most valuable. I think it's going to be Nico Collins, but the gap between Nico Collins and Tank Dell is pretty wide. And given that Stroud and Tank Dell are best friends, wouldn't be shocked if he just loves chucking the ball deep to Tank Dell this season, that Tank Dell becomes their number one wide receiver, and you're getting a number one wide receiver on one of the best passing offenses in football as the 26th wide receiver off boards. He can really outproduce that. He can end up being a wide receiver one easily this season. So let me know if you liked this general concept. We're probably not going to do it again, obviously. Well, maybe we'll do it again next season. But let me know if you liked it. If you did watch this far, please leave a like. It really does help me out. It takes half a second to do. Leave a comment. Who do you think are decent value? So who is someone who you think is an exceptional value in drafts this season, given where you can get them by ADP on average, but I did not include in this video? And is there anyone in this video that you don't feel amazing about, right? Maybe I'm wrong. I'm going to be wrong on probably 30% of the people in this video for sure. Who do you think it is? Who do you think I'm wrong on in the comment section down below? That'll do it for this one, though. Thank you all for watching. Again, hit the like button if you watched this far, but I'll catch you all on the next one.